Hey guys, welcome back to What a Time to Be Alive. My name's Amu, and today I have a guest with me, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Summer. I am in 10th grade, and I am very liberal. Sorry, I just wanted to start off like that.
Okay. I guess most of you have probably figured out that I'm on the conservative side of things. So last episode that I mentioned that I would be doing an episode talking about gun rights as a result of the Parkland shooting and all the stuff that has come from it. So I figured it'd be nice to have someone who has differing political views than I do to talk about this. So I guess we're just going to get started now. Okay, so Summer, what are your views on what needs to change after the Parkland shooting?
What needs to change? Our government needs to implement policy that bans guns outright. There should be no guns. Guns are the problem here. How are people dying? Guns! People are being shot to death. Children are being shot to death in schools. Seriously. Seriously?
Okay, did you ever think about the things that led to the guy shooting all of these people, like the mental reasons behind it?
Oh, like you mean him walking into a gun store and purchasing a gun? Yeah, I did think about that, and I think it should be banned.
Okay, so I think that the reason for this was the fact that law enforcement really failed to understand that there was a risk here. Did you know that there was 39 individual complaints made about him to the Parkland police office and 2 complaints made to the FBI about the fact that he's dangerous and should not have a weapon that were ignored by both parties?
No comment.
Okay. Well, it happened, and I happen to think that more than the gun, if law enforcement had been responsible for this and had written up a report and investigated the issue and realized that he shouldn't have had a gun, this wouldn't have happened.
All right, but it wouldn't have happened if he never had a gun to begin with.
Well, sure, but if you take away guns from everybody, then that's punishing a whole group of people for the actions of one person. Don't you think that's unfair?
All right, but what do they need guns for if not to defend themselves from other gun owners? What are they going to do? Go hunting and shoot a bunch of poor innocent animals in the wild? Are you serious? That's some kind of loss to these monsters? Everyone should be a vegan while I'm at this. But, seriously? Seriously?
Are you trying to say that veganism could have prevented the shooting indirectly?
I'm not saying that exactly, but, being a vegan seriously improves your state of mind. So, if you are correct and this person was, quote-unquote, unstable, veganism probably could have improved their lives and brought them out of whatever depression that society forced them into in the first place to make them commit such treacherous acts. But really, it's about guns here. I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
Okay, well, besides the fact that there's no proof saying that veganism can cure mental illness, do you not think that there's any sort of fault on the police and the FBI for letting this happen in the first place? And what do you feel about the sheriff who ignored those 39 individual complaints, going against the spokesperson for the NRA and blaming her for the fact that he has a gun and that he killed all these people?
It is the NRA's fault. They've bought all of our major politicians and policymakers. We cannot pass any real legislation here because it's been bought out by all these big interest groups. It is some language I can't use on this podcast, but you know exactly what I mean. They are manipulating our government with their money. Those conservative... That's all I have to say.
Well, I think whether or not people in government are corrupted is besides the point of if you think the bureaucratic side of the problem had anything to do with the shooting more than the mental state and the ability that he had to get the gun in the first place. Because I come from a place where I support the Second Amendment, and I do agree that there needs to be better background checks, which is what, the NRA believes too. They don't think he should have been able to get a gun in the first place because he, clearly isn't in the mental state to do so. So do you think that better background checks could fix the problem instead of taking away everyone's right to self-defense?
Better background checks will solve only so much of the problem. The larger issue is that everyone in America has access to guns, people that shouldn't have access to guns. And no matter what you guys decide to do in your background checks, how can you really foresee the future that well? Conservatives literally think you guys think you know everything. You cannot know everything. Background checks can only prevent so much.
But do you think that just taking away guns from all people would keep them from getting their hands on a gun? Because people have outlawed drugs and, a lot of other illegal substances. Even in Prohibition, way back then, people still found a way to get alcohol. So what makes you think that people wouldn't have access to guns still? And how do you think people are going to be able to take other people's guns away? How are governments going to monitor the fact that no one has a gun or figure out who does have a gun and, search their houses? How will they get that many warrants to search houses and take their guns away? And also, how will they find a way to forego and essentially omit one of the most well-defended amendments to the Constitution?
Our founding fathers wrote that amendment in a time where it took a minute to reload their gun. They did not have assault rifles. They could not fire 40 rounds per minute. It was not the same. Laws need to change as the times change. It needs to be paralleled by development in our government and in our laws and policy. It's just completely it's just ridiculous. Yes, we should ban guns. Yes, it will be hard to do, but look, we can deport millions of quote-unquote illegal immigrants and dreamers, but we can't stop guns? I don't think so.
Well, the people being deported are proven illegal immigrants, but okay, you say that taking away guns is going to be hard to do, but I'm saying that it's going to be pretty much impossible to keep people from getting their hands on guns.
Has it been pretty much impossible to keep people from getting their hands on heroin and cocaine? Listen, if it were legal, how prolific do you think it would be? Listen, we can limit substances through legal means. We can limit guns through legal means. Our government has the capability to do it. They spy on us through our phones every day. I think they can take our guns away.
Well, spying on us through our phones really hasn't been proven either, but I'm saying that even though we can control it in a way, if you're just looking to control the guns, then why are you asking to ban them? Because earlier you said ban, and now you think government should be able to control our use of them. So why not just add more restrictions on who can get them, which is what everyone pretty much wants across the way anyway. No one wants to have someone who's mentally unstable to have a gun because it's not okay for them either. But most of the people see it as a way to defend themselves. And so, most people, when they move out, they're 18. They move out of their house, and they live alone. And a lot of people have guns so they can protect themselves in the case that someone breaks into their house or something. Because most 18-year-olds can't really afford, a high-tech security system to be installed wherever they are living at the time. So what do you have to say for those people who see it as a way to defend themselves, are not mentally unstable, got their guns through legal means, and don't abuse that right? Whereas there's a few people who happen to get past the system and get the guns anyway, but then are again failed by the police and the FBI, in this case, who completely ignored the claims, and the gun could have been taken away from him long ago, because those complaints were sent in over a course of 7 years. So this could have been stopped so long ago, and it wasn't because of law enforcement. So why wouldn't stricter laws fix this issue?
I just want to go back to the thing you said about 18-year-olds moving out and living on their own and needing guns to defend themselves. In this economic climate, it's honestly impossible. We are drowning in student loan debt because the government will not help us pay for college, which is ridiculous because we can fund the deportation of millions, as I have mentioned earlier, and we can fund government spying through our iPhones, which is why I don't use a phone.
Wait. Summer, how do you contact people then?
I'm mainly getting in contact with people through message boards at grocery stores. I leave my card there and a photo of me, and if you leave them in the right places, there's this one vegan cupcake shop I go to. Okay, this is irrelevant.
Yeah, you're right. This is relevant. But anyway, let's say we ban guns. Let's say a school shooter got their hands on a gun through illegal means and went to shoot up a school. How do you think police would be able to take down a gunman when they have no guns.
All right. I mean, at least then the shooting wouldn't be government sanctioned.
You think the Parkland shooting was government sanctioned?
I mean, by supporting the Second Amendment, yeah, basically.
Well, supporters of the Second Amendment don't want people to be killed. They don't hate high school kids. They just want to make sure that their way of defending themselves is protected, as it has been for so long. And I don't think they appreciate it that the people like Sheriff Israel, who was at the CNN town hall meeting, were attacking Dana Loesch, who was trying to explain the fact that she agrees that this person shouldn't have gotten a gun, whereas he's the one who ignored so many complaints about the shooter and decides that it wasn't his fault at all and was a huge hypocrite. And I don't think they appreciate giving up their rights to someone like that. More than that, he was the one who was in charge of the people who went in, the police officers that were sent to the school to try and stop the shooting. And 4 of them, the 4 that were sent, decided to wait outside instead of trying to neutralize the shooter for 4 minutes. The whole shooting was 6 minutes. Those officers waited outside for 4 minutes. With guns, mind you. And they were still just as ineffective. But still, maybe there was no way to take down the shooter without guns anyway. But why do you think people should give up their rights to police officers who won't protect them?
Well, I think that if the shooter had been African American or Islamic of origin, I think that the police would have rushed in there right away. And the only reason they didn't was because the shooter was white. And white privilege, white male privilege more specifically, is one of the biggest problems we have in society. And honestly, if our police force weren't corrupt and full of brutality and constantly lashing out against the wrong citizens, I think this problem could have been solved.
But the shooter was white.
That's what I'm saying. That's why they didn't go in there.
So you think the police essentially were sanctioned and felt the need to not go in there and neutralize the shooter because he was a white male?
Don't you think they would have been a little more concerned if he were of Islamic origin and claiming he was doing it for ISIS?
But I don't think they were aware of the shooter at all. They just knew there was a shooter, so there wouldn't be any reason for racial bias at that point.
Yeah, but you aren't certain.
I am certain that 4 of them waited outside while someone was massacring 17 high school kids and teachers.
No comment.
Do you think... why do you think banning guns would solve an issue like this at all, when it's clear that mental illness was the reason? And the fact that the bureaucratic agencies didn't do anything despite the reports. Don't you think there needs to be a change to how reports like this are handled by the police and the FBI?
Obviously, there needs to be a change, but would there really be needs for reports like this if there were no guns at all? Yes, everybody wants guns. They all love guns. They all love self-defense, and they love hunting animals. Like, they all go on this big thing with Trump as their leader, and they go hunting pheasants in the summer. But no, okay? You can give up a little bit of your luxuries and your greediness for the well-being of everyone, especially these high school students who deserve to graduate and deserve to go to college and live their lives.
Well, I think everyone on the conservative side agrees that it was a tragedy that happened. But the question is, why should the majority be punished when it should really be the people with mental illness that should be focused on who have a gun? Because my parents have a gun. We have 3. And I feel like I'm more safe with one in the house in the case that someone came into the house. But there are people that know how to use it, and they've passed several tests in order to be able to get it. So do you think changing the way that it works? And let's be clear, it happened in the most liberal state in the entire country. And California arguably has really strict gun laws compared to some other places in their own state. So do you think it really is the conservative agenda? Because California is liberal, so.
Are you saying that liberals funded this school shooting?
No, I think liberal reaction to this shooting is ridiculous.
You mean our tears and mourning and grief for these high school students is ridiculous to you? Conservatives are so cold-hearted.
What?
You heard me.
both conservatives and liberals shed tears for these victims. No one wanted them to die. No one told that gunman to go kill those kids and those teachers.
All right, so why did you imply that liberals did?
When did I imply that liberals did?
Why don't you just rewind your podcast and listen to it?
Okay, so I really think that guns weren't the issue here, and I think it was that one person. And I don't think that gun owners should be punished for the fact that he slipped through the system. But I do agree that there needs to be a change in how people get guns, and there should be a stricter way to do background checks and mental assessments to make sure someone has a gun. And on top of that, if someone does have a gun and it's known that they have a risk of misusing it, as was reported to the police department and the FBI, and by the comments that he's made and that were reported as well, then there should be an investigation into whether that individual should keep their gun or if they should have it taken away from them instead of it just being ignored. So I think there's a real problem with how those reports are handled, and I think there needs to be a change in that across the board, not just for Parkland, but I'm sure a lot of these could have been prevented by certain signs that were seen in the individual before it happened.
So you're saying that, like, school shootings are completely preventable?
I don't think they're completely preventable, but I think this specific one that we're talking about was completely preventable because of everything that was done beforehand and all the reports that people got that were just kind of brushed aside. And there was absolutely no paperwork done for them and no investigation done for 39 different ones.
I mean, your facts aren't enough to convince me, but whatever.
Okay, so I guess that kind of wraps up our gun control talk. And now I kind of want to move on to feminism, because that's another thing that I had discussed in a different episode of the podcast. And I think it'd be nice to include, just considering that we have a guest here now. And I actually have someone else that would like to join in to this. And she'll introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Ginger, and I'm also a liberal.
Okay, Ginger, so what do you feel is wrong with feminism today? What do you feel is right with feminism? I'm not really sure what you feel about it.
I feel like there's nothing wrong with feminism. I think it's just such a real matter in this world, and I don't think that it should be taken lightly. I mean, it's just a real thing, and I feel like it should be focused on more and seen as important as it is.
So what are some issues that you think that feminism really is shining a new light to?
I feel like there's, always been the wage gap. That's been really, really important.
The wage gap was debunked like a long time ago by a female professor at Harvard.
Well, yeah, but that's just one person's opinion. Like, how do we know she's right? Because, I mean, there's really no proof. Like, she doesn't know what's going on in all of America. It's a really big country.
Well, I mean, I think the fact that it wasn't her opinion going into the study is really credible. And she's also a woman herself. If she wanted to, kind of bring to light that it would be her that's affected by the issue too. So maybe she wouldn't have published it if it wasn't favorable to her, but I think she was just trying to do it to prove the fact that it's been misconstrued. And the way that the wage gap initially started is that they took like a completely random man salary and a completely random women's salary without considering what their jobs were, what their qualifications are, the state that they worked in. Because, salary varies because of cost of living in certain places. And they just compared it and realized, oh, well, one of them makes 75 cents to the dollar, but they didn't look at anything else about them. And so that's been the number that a lot of, mostly liberal people cling on to. So don't you think that there's a kind of need to move past that one argument that most feminists still focus on today?
Well, I don't know how this professor just thought that a few people could represent an entire population. Maybe for those people it wasn't true because by chance, the wage gap wasn't going on there. And how do we know that this is a credible study? Because, it could have been all conservatives that were in charge of this. Maybe someone just paid her to say that the study was real, and it wasn't. I just don't think it's that credible.
And we can say that about the same person that found that there was a wage gap in the first place. They could have just been a sad woman who wanted more pay and decided to make up a number, and then it kind of spread.
No comment.
Okay, what do you think about the fact that a lot of feminists just hate Trump?
I think that they're totally justified because, like, there's been all these incidences of him sexually harassing women and just doing all these things. And, I mean, he's just gross.
Okay, but don't you think that it should be taken into fact that they haven't been proven yet and they're just claims? Not saying that people should ignore the claims of these women and it shouldn't be looked into, but do you think it's right to just assume that he's guilty just because of that? Or don't you think there should be a wait to see what's going on? And also, a lot of feminists don't hate him for that reason. It's also just because they don't think he's as good as Hillary, and it just kind of spurred on.
I mean, well, he's not as good as Hillary, but also, I mean, we don't have a reason to not believe these women. I don't know why they would come out and just say that Trump was harassing them if he really wasn't.
Don't you think maybe they would want fame and media coverage because he is the president, and obviously that story would get covered a lot?
No, I don't, because I feel like that puts them, like, at risk. Like, if Trump supporters found them, maybe they would want to harass them or do something to them themselves. So I feel like the fact that they're putting themselves out there like that really means that it must be true.
Summer, do you have anything to add to this at all?
I think the wage gap is really real. And I have experienced it myself. Like, where I work, I make $8.50 an hour, and, like, the guys I work with make $9 an hour.
Do they work the exact same job as you?
I mean, like, we work in the same place, and we're, like, the same age with the same qualifications you were talking about. So, like, I feel like it's really real.
But are they in the same position as you are?
No comment.
Okay. Ginger, do you think you've experienced any instances of the wage gap in actuality?
Well, I mean, I guess I've never really had an actual job before. Like, I don't know. So I guess I can't really say.
So then, just like you said, how would the Harvard professor know if the wage gap exists? How would you know if you really haven't experienced it at all or haven't seen any of it really happening?
Well, I mean, like, look, I check up on social media and stuff like that all the time in different websites. Like, a really good one that I go to for a lot of advice on this type of stuff is Cosmopolitan. Like, I feel like they just have such valid and real opinions on the matter.
Why would you get political information from Cosmopolitan? They really don't have any sort of authority in that kind of a sense, and they're not a news source in any way. It's more of a social thing.
Well, I mean, the writers for it did go to college, I'm assuming, and have gotten a really good education, and they're people with political opinions, so I feel like it's valid. Anyways, that's besides the point. Like, that's not my only source of information. Like, sometimes me and Summer will get cupcakes, vegan cupcakes, after work from Whole Foods, and, like, she just tells me all about the wage gap issue she has there. I mean, it's awful.
Summer, how do you afford vegan cupcakes on an $8.50 salary at a part-time job?
I mean, look, I just feel like you need to spend your money where it's important and, like, where it makes you happy. Because, like, happiness is my ultimate goal.
Okay, well, pretty much my, like, main problem with feminists is the fact that they really argue based on a lot of opinions and a lot of, like, extreme, like, generalizations, such as, you know, like, blaming Trump for a lot of things and just saying they hate Trump and seeing him as, like, a sign of hatred against women and against colored people and a lot of other things. But I think it's hard to take someone seriously when they're not providing a fact-based argument about anything, which most feminists, I think, like, feminist rallies when they're wearing, you know, like, pussy hats and all of these things, I just think it's hard to take them seriously. And I think they're dividing people more about them instead of trying to get more people on their side about the issue.
Are you saying that we really can't wear, like, a pussy hat on our head to show that we are proud of our bodies and, like, who we are? I mean, seriously, you're a woman. You must know what it's like to be sexualized against your will. Listen, our bodies should be something we're able to show off and be proud of without constantly being objectified.
Well, I don't think should be shame in being a woman, and I certainly don't have any shame in being one. I just don't think it's really easy for other people to take me seriously when I have a vagina on my head. Ginger, do you have anything to say about this?
I mean, I feel like I just really agree with Summer, and I feel like in this country, it's all about freedom, right? So we should have the freedom to wear whatever we want.
Well, no one's saying that you shouldn't be able to say what you want. I just think it's difficult for other people to get on board with the message when it's really hard to listen to when they're, just screaming a lot of hateful things and generalizations and not arguing with fact, which is what people should believe, instead of, looking at opinion articles on Cosmopolitan, which mainly, writes things about, 10 ways to tickle his pickle and that kind of stuff. They're really not in any way authorized to speak politically. And I guess, opinions are fine, but I don't think you should hold opinions to fact. And most of those articles are marked as opinion for a reason. So...
Well, you know what is a fact? That Republicans are just totally against abortion, which I do not think is okay. I mean, I read on Cosmopolitan that all Republicans hate children, so why should they just have a say in any of this?
Well, I guess abortion is a really huge feminist issue, but I happen to be a Republican who's really not against abortion. So not all of us hate abortion, and they don't hate children if they want them to live and not get aborted, right?
I mean, I happen to be a liberal who is actually against abortion. I really think that all life should be preserved.
Are you sure you're not just a really, liberal-looking conservative who's a vegan?
Absolutely not, because conservatives are terrible people. But, life should be preserved.
Okay, Ginger?
I mean, I feel like women should just be able to do whatever they want with their body. I just don't see why this is anyone's issue except a woman's issue, which is why I don't think all these men, like Trump, should have a say in it.
I mean, he's the president. I feel like his whole job is to have a say in it, but you don't have to necessarily agree with that opinion.
Ginger, I feel like Buddha would be really disappointed with you right now. You're clearly not enlightened.
Wow. Ginger, what do you have to say about that?
I feel like we're getting really off topic and that I'm a feminist, not a Buddhist.
So I guess my main gripe with feminism is the fact that in America, women have equal rights. They have had equal rights for so long. And if they do make less than men, it's probably because, one, they're not in the same position, or two, they're just not in that, they're not in a career or in a field where they get paid as much as a man in a different field does. But I also think that it's wrong to complain about, having not equal rights and having unequal pay in America, because that's been illegal for so long. And if that was the case, then why would people not just hire women and be able to pay them less and have more money for themselves as corporate owners?
All right. Well, I really think that a lot of it has to do with, the fact that higher paying jobs tend to be STEM careers. And it's, been proven that, women are just typically better at, reading and writing and, history type of careers. You know what I mean? A lot of women are Cosmo writers.
Okay, but doesn't that show that it was their choice not to go into those STEM careers? There's plenty of women who choose to go into STEM careers. No one's forcing them to stay away from it. And it just happens, it is statistically proven that more men go into those type of careers. So I guess you're right in that case.
But what I'm saying is that, everything is geared towards things that men are good at, because men are good at, science and, math, because their brains can only focus on, one thing at a time, and so they're really good at, focusing in on, one thing. For women, that's why we're, good at writing, because, we can do so many things with our brains at once, but, we can't do STEM careers. And, of course, it's a man's world, so STEM careers are the highest paying jobs. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why isn't being a history teacher more highly valued?
Because I think being a doctor just takes more out of you, and it takes a lot more education, and it takes more training, and so people are being compensated for the amount of time they spent studying by their pay, whereas a history teacher, you can have a bachelor's degree.
I mean, I just feel strongly that everything is geared against women. I mean, just the higher paying jobs are all more suited to men. I mean, literally everything is better suited to men, even cars. Sometimes the steering wheel is just too big for my hand.
Okay, Ginger?
I do have something. Okay. Actually, I do have something relevant to add to this. So I feel like women also have to take the time off to have kids, so they have to go on maternity leave, which makes them kind of fall behind in the whole training process to get these STEM jobs. And while they actually have these STEM jobs, they have to take time off for kids, and they're being punished for it by getting money deducted from their salary that men aren't. I just don't think it's fair.
Well, I mean, there's also paternity leave for people that have kids and they're male and they're maybe a single parent. So there is that, but also it's a woman's choice to have a kid. If you guys are like supporting abortion is completely legal still, whether conservatives want it or not. So if women are that ambitious about getting their degree over having a kid, then that was their call to do so. And even if it does set them back in that training, by the time they're done with training, they have the same training as men would in their field. It'll just be a little later. So it shouldn't affect their pay, and it really doesn't either, because they don't check when you got a degree. They just check if you had one.
All right, but if we're comparing people with the same qualifications and, like, the same ages in the same jobs, like, so a woman at 35, maybe she had 2 kids at some point. But women, we have to continue the human race. Like, without women, like, this population will die out. Like, if we're not having kids and we're choosing, and every woman decides to choose her specialty over, like, her children, like, this whole, like, the planet will die. Like, humans will die.
Well, yeah, but there's several women who are, like, top entrepreneurs. Like, Lori Grenier, she definitely is, like, one of the most... She's an entrepreneur. She started so many businesses. She's a great investor. She has children. Like, she's doing completely fine.
Well, I mean, Oprah does not have children.
But Oprah's Oprah. I mean, you don't need to have children in order to be successful, just as not having children doesn't mean that you will be successful. It's more about personal drive, don't you think?
Okay, well, what's driving the continuation of the human race then?
Well, I guess you can't do that without women, but no one's saying that women are harmful to society. I just think feminists in the U.S. are just being petty about things that a lot of times don't exist. Because if you look at women in other countries that are being seriously oppressed, feminists in Saudi Arabia and other countries like that definitely have more of a feminist argument to make and have more reasons for fighting for certain rights. Like, they just recently got the right to drive. So don't you think feminists in America who live in oftentimes a lot of luxury complaining about things like capitalism and the wage gap, which doesn't exist, is just ridiculous?
I mean, you have a good point, and I really do sympathize for the women in the other countries, but I feel like we were talking about feminism in America and why it's an issue here, and I feel like, I mean, you can't really say that I can't argue these things if I don't want to. I mean, I feel like I'm entitled to argue about feminism because these issues are real, and millions of women wouldn't support this if it wasn't.
So are you saying that it's right to go against things and protest things like capitalism in the U.S.?
I am not well versed on this topic, so no comment.
Okay. Summer, do you believe it's okay?
I do believe it's okay because, you know what? That's our First Amendment right, is to protest and to gather and to speak our opinion. And if we want to protest capitalism, we can.
Well, it's not an issue of whether you can. Do you really think you should, seeing other people and their issues in other countries?
Well, I mean, ignoring other countries and just talking about America for the moment, I just think...
That seems to be what most liberals do.
I'm going to choose to ignore your comment. What I really wanted to say was, women's voices are never heard anyway, so does it even matter if we complain?
I think women's voices are heard considering the fact that we're talking about them in this moment.
Do you think anyone's going to even watch this podcast?
You know what, Summer? I think for the first time in this entire episode, you're right, because no one can watch a podcast. Okay, well, I think I'm going to end the podcast there since it's been almost 35 minutes. But thanks for being here, you guys. It was really nice to have opinions that weren't like mine on the podcast. Do you guys have any closing remarks?
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Everyone should go vegan.
Okay, well, I'll see you guys in another 2 weeks.